Hello, 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 and happy Sunday. I'm super excited to be here today. Today, we're going to be talking about I was addicted to being needed until I got empty. um, if this is your first time joining me, I go live every Sunday to give you some training in relation to moving yourself out of survival mode in some way. And we usually cover some pretty common things that come up as a result of me talking to clients or interacting with people within my group or even just having normal conversations day to day with women who are stuck in survival mode. So I want to take you back to a moment I cracked, not in some dramatic fall on the floor, cry for help kind of way. It was much quieter, more subtle, but it shook me to my core. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, phone in one hand, body aching, so tired. And another message popped up. Hey, can I just run something by you for real quick? Another emergency, another fire to put out, another I just need 5 minutes that would turn into an hour of emotional labor that I didn't have to give. And without thinking, I typed back, of course, what's going on? My body was screaming no, but my feelings typed yes on autopilot because saying no, that felt dangerous. It felt like rejection. It felt like abandonment. It felt like I was failing someone. And if I wasn't useful, who was I? That was the moment that the loudest, that was the moment. It wasn't the loudest breakthrough I've had, but it was an honest one because I realized I didn't know who I was outside of being the strong one, the one that everyone can count on, the one that always had the answer, the solution, the bandwidth, the time. I was so needed by everyone, but really chosen, rarely poured into, rarely seen beyond what I can do for others. And it hit me like a gut punch. Being needed felt like love until I had nothing left to give, not even to myself. And that's when I started asking harder questions. Was I actually connected to people or just useful to them? Did they love me or just the way that I made them feel? Was I building a life or a performance? And the deeper I went, the more I uncovered the real addiction. I wasn't addicted to helping, I was addicted to feeling like I mattered. And being needed was the only way that I ever learned to feel like I mattered. This isn't just my story. This is so many other women's stories, especially ones who have grown up too soon, the one who have learned early that love is something you earn, the ones that have been praised for strength but punished for softness, the ones who are exhausted but can't seem to stop performing. That's who this live is for. We're about to unpack how trauma dressed up as people pleasing, how overgiving became your safety blanket, and what healing looks like when you're finally ready to stop needing to be needed. I want to be able to disrupt this cycle with you. Let's talk about the real cost of being the strong one. Let's be honest about the wounds behind service because you don't have to earn your place in the room by being useful. You don't have to keep emptying yourself just to feel worthy. You don't have to keep abandoning yourself just to feel loved. Not anymore. So, if this is your first time joining me, my name is Letitia. I am the Survival Made Disruptor. I am a trauma recovery mentor that facilitates unapologetic transformations for high achieving women who are ready to exit survival mode and take radical ownership of their lives and their growth. And I love having conversations around the residual impact of trauma. I love having conversations about working through trauma and getting out of survival mode. And if you've been rocking with me for a while, you already know that we don't do surface level healing around here. We go deep, we go raw, we get real uncomfortable in the name of truth, transformation, and disrupting every damn pattern that has kept us stuck. So, we're going to begin with the addiction of being needed. The moment when you realize being needed became your identity. And it looks like love. It feels like connection. It sounds like I don't know what I would do without you. But underneath is a trauma response with a really good PR. Let's be real. Needing to be needed is one of the most socially accepted trauma responses out there. Nobody questions it. In fact, people celebrate it for you. You're such a good friend. You always show up for everyone. You're the one I can always count on. And every time they say it, you got a little dopamine hit. You feel seen, important, valuable. But here's the catch. It's not you they're praying. It's not you they're praising. It's your usefulness. So let's talk about the biochemistry of validation. When you're the fixer, the one who always has a solution, the one who puts out fires with one hand while juggling your own chaos with another, you're getting a steady drip of dopamine. Your brain is literally rewarding you for performance. But when it wears off and you need another hit, another person to help, another crisis to solve, you call it love, but it's really a hustle. So, where does this all start? I believe it starts with childhood conditioning because none of us wake up one day and choose this pattern. We are trained into it. Maybe you were the oldest daughter who had to grow up too fast. Hi, Dan. Maybe your parents were emotionally unavailable or emotionally overwhelmed and you become the peacekeeper. Maybe you learned early that your feelings didn't matter, but your helpfulness did. You got praise for being mature. You got attention for being low maintenance. You got love when you made life easier for someone else. And again, that's not connection, that's conditioning. And when no one molded emotional attunement for you, you started confusing being needed with being loved. So that leads us into a self sacrifice cycle. When you keep giving, when you keep fixing, keep being the go to girl because it earns you something that feels like safety. But over time, that self sacrifice starts to hollow you out. And here's how the invisible reward cycle works. You give beyond your capacity. You then get validation for it. You feel worthy, even if it's temporarily. And then comes the resentment, the burnout, the emptiness. But you're so disconnected from your own needs that you repeat the cycle until one day your body, your soul, your spirit says no more. So, how do we move from codependency to connection? Most of us were never taught the difference between connection and codependency. We think love means being everything to everyone. We think value means being available at all times. We think boundaries are selfish. So we pour ourselves out until we're dry. We tell ourselves, well, at least they need me. But the real connection doesn't cost you peace. It doesn't drain you. It doesn't leave you empty after you show up. Real connections are mutual. They honor your humanity. They make space for you to say no, not just say yes. So, one of the things that I like to do during these trainings is give you some things to reflect on. So, I want you to get out a piece of paper, your journal, your note app, And I'm going to give you some prompts to consider after this training. The first one is, when did being useful start to feel like love? Write it down and then dig deep as you answer. I want you to let this land. Think about back to the first time you felt important because of what you could do for someone else. Who taught you that your value was in your service? Who showed you, intentionally or not, that love had to be earned? I learned it from my father, and it carried with me for most of my life, right? So, how has that belief shaped every relationship since? For me, it shaped everything. At 43, I'm still rewriting some of those, some of that conditioning that I learned as a child, that a lot of what I deserved was conditional. So again, I give you these prompts throughout the training for you to write down, for you to ruminate on and get honest about once the training ends. And the reason for that is because I believe there are three phases to exiting survival mode. The first one is self-awareness. A lot of times we are unaware that we're even operating from trauma responses. And I want to give you the opportunity to gain the awareness that you need in order to make a change. I liken awareness to course correction. You're able to change things once you become aware of that. You are not loved because you're needed. You are not valuable because you are available. You are not worthy because you carry someone else's load. You are enough even when you rest, even when you say no, even when you let someone hold the places, the pieces. So we're going to go deeper. We're going to start unpacking what it means to detach your identity from usefulness and finally come back to yourself. We're going to be talking about reclaiming your identities, your energy, rebuilding your boundaries, and leaning into being chosen and not just needed. So let's explore why helping became a survival identity. So you've realized it. You were not addicted to helping, you were addicted to what helping gave you: the control, the validation, the illusion of closeness. And now that you're probably wondering, if this isn't who I really am, then why has it felt like the only version of me that works? So let's talk about it, because overgiving isn't a random habit you picked up. It's not just who you are, it's how you survived. So overgiving is a protective pattern. It's not a personality trait, it's a nervous system strategy. It's what your body learned to do when love felt unpredictable, when emotions weren't mirrored, when safety depended on making someone else okay. This is where the fawn response comes in. You probably heard a fight, flight, and freeze, but fawn, that's a survival response most women carry silently. It's when your nervous system says, I'll make myself small enough, helpful enough, pleasant enough, and maybe I'll stay safe. So fawning turns into people pleasing, over functioning, saying yes when you mean no, apologizing for having needs, reading the room before you even breathe in it. And this isn't about being kind. This is about staying safe. And in having this conversation, we have to explore hyper empathy versus capacity. You became hyper attuned to everyone else's pain, every shift in tone, every sigh, every need they didn't say out loud. You know how to fix it before they even ask. But here's the problem: you're tracking everyone else's nervous system and completely disconnected from your own. And that's not empathy, that's surveillance. And when your body is always bracing, you confuse your capacity with your compulsion. You give even when you're empty. I know I did. I would pour and pour and pour until I had nothing else to give. Because giving feels safer than sitting still, because silence feels like rejection, because if you aren't helping, you don't know who you are. So we begin to overfunction to avoid our own stuff. Sometimes being the strong one, the helpful one, the go-to person is a really effective way on avoiding your own wounds. You're too busy fixing everyone else's chaos that you don't have to look at your own pain. Hello, Elsa from California. You don't have to sit in stillness. You don't have to admit you feel unworthy without a real. You don't have to ask yourself, what do I need? Because needing feels dangerous, because receiving feels like a risk, because if you stop doing, everything might fall apart, including you. A lot of this deep belief is rooted in lies, right? If I stop helping, I'll be abandoned. So we need to go deeper. We need to dig deeper into this. Most women who overgive carry this hidden burden. If I stop helping, they'll leave. And guess what? That belief didn't come from nowhere. It came from parents who only praise your productivity. It came from friends who disappeared when you had a boundary, partners who only stayed when you were useful, a world that applauded you for what you do, but never asks you who you are. So you internalized it. If I'm not helpful, I'm disposable. If I'm not needed, I'm nothing. If I'm not fixing, I'm failing. But that belief is not truth, it's trauma. Trauma taught you to earn your spot. So let's pause right here. So many of us are stuck in relationships, jobs, friendships, even family dynamics where we feel like we have to earn our seat at the table. But love isn't supposed to be a transaction. You shouldn't have to bleed for belonging. You shouldn't have to hustle to be held. You shouldn't have to abandon yourself to feel chosen. People who love you because you overgive, they don't love you. They love your function. And you were made for more than just being functional. So now it's time to pull out these journals once again. And I want you to consider, if I wasn't needed, would I still feel valuable? I want you to let that crack something open for you, because that's a big question. If no one relied on you tomorrow, if no one called you, no one texted you, no one asked you for a favor, who would you be? What would you believe about your worth? Would you still show up for yourself? Or does your value only exist in the eyes of those who you save? I want you to be honest about this, right? Again, in order for us to access survival mode, we have to start with self awareness. These may be brutal questions for some of us, really causing us to peel back things that we have hidden for a long time. But that's the first step. Once you get to this place of understanding why you do what you do, what is your motivation behind everything, it gives you the opportunity to course correct. This is the moment we stop pretending that helping is harmless. This is where we name it for what it is, a trauma rooted way in making yourself necessary, because deep down, you don't believe you are enough on your own. And I see you. You've given so much, you've held so much, you've become so much for everybody else. But next, we're going to be turning the lens inwards. We're going to be talking about how to untangle your identity from being needed. We're going to be exploring what it actually means to rest, receive, and be held, because you've earned it. I'm sorry, not because you've earned it. but because you are actually worthy of it. So, we're going to go on to exploring the burnout of constantly holding. We uncovered how overgiving became your nervous system strategy, how survival taught you to find safety in being useful, how trauma shaped you and your beliefs that being needed equaled being worthy. Now I want to talk about the price tag, the cost of holding it all, because let's be real, you're not just tired, you are touch deprived, emotionally dehydrated, and spiritually depleted. You've mastered the art of being everyone's anchor, but nobody ever asks what it's costing you. So, the truth of the matter is you're not just tired, you're drained. It's not just an end of week tired. It's I don't want to talk to anybody today kind of tired. It's why do I have to do it all today kind of tired. It's the one more person asks me for something I might scream kind of tired. But instead of stopping, you keep going because strong is your default. That's what you learned. You learned that silence feels selfish because you've always been the one that shows up. But my question to you is who's showing up for you? You're probably the strong one that no one checks on. The strong one, the reliable one, the one that holds space for everybody else. That's the woman that I'm talking to. You've become the safe space for so many. But when was the last time someone made you feel safe? It's the gut punching moment when you realize people don't check on you because they think you're always okay. That's part of the performance, right? You've built a brand around being capable, and now you're stuck performing that brand, even if it's killing you, because the moment you break that character, people get uncomfortable. What? You're asking for help? You? Aren't you the one I go to for help? Like, why would you need my help? That right there, that's the most dangerous part. You made suffering in silence look so graceful. And then now nobody knows that you're suffering at all. So let's talk about how your nervous system reacts when you're always on. There's always something happening beneath the surface. Your body is running on high alert autopilot. And, if you've caught my other podcast, Survival Mode Disrupted, I asked every guest how they describe survival mode, and most of them talk about autopilot. That's a sure sign of being in survival mode. You are in constant hypervigilance, reading the room, solving all the problems, managing all the emotions. So you wake up tired, your jaw is tight, your shoulders are up to your ears, you can't fall asleep. And when you do, you can't even stay asleep. You're jumpy, reactive, overstimulated, but numb all at the same time. And that's not laziness. That's a deregulated nervous system. Your body doesn't know how to rest, how to feel safe, because it's been trained to believe that stillness equals danger. So you perform, you show up, and you do all the things. But then that leads to resentment. Resentment masked as loyalty or guilt, designed or disguised as love. So let's get into some hard truths now. Some of the things that you call loyalty are actually resentments in disguise. You show up for people who would never do the same. You've excused behavior that drains you because you understand their trauma. But who's understanding yours? And the guilt? That's been wearing a mask called love. You say yes to avoid conflict. You overextend to be a good daughter, a supportive friend, a dependable employee, or the best partner. But Underneath the yes is that silent scream. When is it going to be my turn? Which leads us to the cost of always being available. When you are always available to everyone else, you are slowly becoming unavailable to yourself. You stop hearing your own voice. You stop honoring your own needs. You stop recognizing your own burnout until your body makes a choice for you. And maybe it looks like a breakdown. Maybe it's panic attacks. Maybe it's illness. Maybe it's straight up numbness that you don't feel anything at all anymore. That's your body saying, I can't carry this for everyone anymore. I'm not built for it. So let's take this out of your head and into your body. Where are you carrying someone else's load? I want you to close your eyes if it's safe. Don't be doing it while you're driving. And I want you to get still. I want you to breathe in through your nose, hold for 4, exhale slowly through your mouth. Again, inhale, hold, exhale. Now scan your body. Where are you feeling your tension? Where are you feeling that you are clenching? Where does it feel heavy? Now ask yourself, is this mine to carry? Repeat after me. I release what's not mine. I return to myself. These are the things that you should be doing when you start feeling overwhelmed. Take one final breath in, longer this time. Hold it. Maybe 8 seconds, six to 8 seconds. Exhale and let it go. And if you have to do it again, ask yourself, is this mine that I'm carrying? And then give yourself permission to release what is not yours and return to yourself. So back to the journals. I want you to sit with this question. Don't answer it too quickly. Don't rush through the answer. What boundaries have I been too tired or too afraid to set? Maybe it's with your mother, maybe it's with your boss, maybe your friends, your partner, your kids, or even with yourself. This is your opportunity to name it and know this. Avoiding boundaries does not protect peace. It just postpones the blow up. And this is the part that no one talks about. How being needed becomes your identity until you forget what it feels like to be held. How exhaustion becomes normal until you don't know who you are without it. And here's the truth. You were never meant to hold everything. You're not a damn net. You were meant to be held too. So we're going to be reclaiming that. We're going to be exploring what it means to come home to yourself, and not through achievement, not through performance, but through restoration. Because you've survived long enough, sis. And now it's time to return to your center. So now we're going to explore what choosing wholeness over codependency looks like. We've named the exhaustion that comes from constantly holding, giving, and fixing. We've cracked open the cost of being the strong one, of carrying others out of guilt, of overextending as a result. But now it's time to pivot, not into more performance, not into another version of strength. We're pivoting into wholeness, not the kind that looks like something shiny on paper, the kind that feels like freedom in your body. Let's talk about what it means to finally stop earning your place and start inhabiting it. So, codependency is not love, it's leakage. We have to be honest. Most of us weren't taught love. We were taught codependency dressed up as connection. We were taught love means being needed. We were taught intimacy means fixing. We were taught that worth means giving until it hurts. But here's the thing no one taught you. You don't have to be needed to be loved. If being useful is your primary role in people's lives, you will always feel replaceable. And that's not love. That's the emotional labor that we talked about at the beginning of this training. And it's emotional labor dressed up as belonging. So, how do we move from fixing to feeling? When your identity is wrapped up in being the solution, you forget how to simply be. You don't know what to do with silence. You don't know how to sit with someone's pain without rushing to fix it. You confuse their discomfort with your own failure. But healing means allowing people to have their own journeys. It means trusting others to grow, even when it's messy. You don't have to rescue people from consequences. You don't have to be the emotional translator in every room. You are allowed to stop fixing and start feeling. Feeling your own needs, feeling your own limits, feeling your own truth without immediately abandoning it for someone else's. And that means you have to learn how to rebuild your identity around being, right? If I stripped away your ability to perform, to provide, to problem solve, who would be left? I never was able to answer that question before I really got onto my healing journey. So much so that I ended up in jail because I overgave and I overextended myself. And I remember my mama coming to visit and asking me a single question. Why do you love everyone else more than you love yourself? And I always describe it as Mike Tyson body blue. She winded me with that question, but it made me realize how much I was self abandoning to be part of other people's lives. I didn't know who I was without pouring into other people. And essentially, I made myself empty as hell as a result. And I was bitter as hell as a result. Because all I knew was my identity that was tied to my usefulness in other people's lives. So if you weren't the strong one, if you weren't the therapist friend, if you weren't the helper, the planner, the emotional mule, what parts of you would emerge? What if you could build your identity around being and not doing? The you who takes up space without apologizing. The you who feels her feelings without explaining. The you who has boundaries that don't come with guilt. The you who exists without performing. That version of you is not selfish, it's sovereign. Listen, the reason why I have these conversations with you is because I had to walk this walk myself. And it's not easy. Like I've spoken on her about being a people pleaser, being a overachiever, being the fixer for everyone. I had to learn how to set boundaries. I had to learn how to put myself first. Recently, I had to set a boundary. I saw something I didn't like. And for years, I would have sat quietly on that. So I expressed myself, I established the boundary. It wasn't received well. And for a half a second, I was like, maybe I should pull back the boundary. Maybe I should just drop it because obviously this is going to impact my relationship in some way. But then I had to remind myself, no, this version of me is not selfish. And if the person pulls away because I'm setting boundaries, they don't need to be in my life in the first place. I'm not going to feel guilty about expressing what bothers me. I'm not going to feel like I can't process how the lack of boundaries have hurt me. But I'm definitely not going to apologize for it, right? Because I'm sovereign. I have that right. And again, if it's not received, then they don't need to be there. They don't deserve it in the first place. So it's important to remember that relationships rooted in real love don't don't need you to be useful. Real intimacy isn't built on how much you can give. It is built on how real you're willing to be. You're allowed to be seen in your silence. You're allowed to be loved in your limits. You are allowed to be held when you have nothing to offer. Because if you are only lovable when you're giving, you're not being loved, you're being used. I'm going to say it again. If you are only lovable when you're giving, you're not being loved, you're being used. And I know it sounds harsh, but naming it is how we break it. So Cabby says, this is my favorite topic. As a therapist in this population of women I see, I was this woman at one point in time in my life. This is this is so common, and that's why we're having this training. So one of the things that I like to give you in addition to the journal prompts are scripts to help you to shift the way that you view and see things and how you respond to things. Because I think a lot of times our barrier for moving beyond that is the absence of a new pattern, the absence of a new belief, or even the absence of the way to address it when it comes up. So, here are a few gentle but powerful ways to help you disrupt that cycle that has you aligning your usefulness with love. First one is, I trust you to figure this out. You don't need to jump in. Trust is love too. Sometimes people's problems aren't your problems. Stop making them your problems. Let people figure out their own shit. The second one is, I don't have the capacity for this right now. And I have said this often. This is like one of my favorite lines. I don't have the capacity for that. There's no argument. A boundary isn't rejection, it's learning how to honor yourself. Another one is, I matter even when I'm unavailable. Affirm it until your nervous system believes it. You don't need to over explain. You don't need to feel guilty. You are allowed to be unavailable and still valuable. So, as we start to wrap this training up, I want to give you a visualization practice. I want you to meet the version of you who is loved just because she exists. So I want you to close your eyes. I want you to ground your feet. And again, don't do this if you're driving. Only do it if it's safe. I want you to breathe in through your nose. I want you to hold it for 4. And then I want you to exhale slowly through your mouth. Now I want you to imagine her, you, the version of you who's loved just because she exists. She's not performing. She's not problem solving. She's not producing. She's soft. She's still. And she's present. She speaks gently to herself. She moves without urgency. She is deeply rooted in her body. And around her, love flows. Support still shows up. Peace surrounds her like a blanket. She's not needed, she's nourished. So I want you to breathe into that. I want you to hold her hand in your mind and now imagine becoming her. So the last prompt for tonight is, what would love look like if I didn't have to earn it? Imagine not having to perform for it, not having to fix for it, and not having to bleed for it. Now receive it. And I want you to write it down. Let yourself imagine that version that is not a fantasy. That answer is what then becomes the blueprint for how you learn to operate. The part of you, this that is healing, the process isn't always loud. It's not girl stars or public praise. It's a quiet reclamation of your energy, of your peace, of your worth. And if you're ready to live that truth, not just know it intellectually, I want you to stay with me for a few more minutes because I want to invite you into a space where this kind of healing is the norm. So let's take a breath. Because if you've made it to this point, you've probably realized something big. You're not just tired, you have been performing connection, performing strength, performing love, performing usefulness, and you're ready to lay it down. So here's one thing I need you to hear with your bones. You don't have to earn your way into community anymore. You don't have to keep offering pieces of yourself to be kept. You don't have to bleed just to belong. If you are tired of confusing being needed with being loved, well, that's why the Survival Mode Exodus membership exists. This is your invitation to be held, not used. And this space was made for you, women just like you, not the version of you that has had it all together, not the version of you who fixes, gives, and holds it all. The real you, the one underneath the proven, the one who's ready to breathe. Inside, we do things differently. We are not a group of women chasing checklists and hustle plans. We are women unlearning the hustle for worth, disrupting the addiction of approval, healing the trauma of overgiving, returning to ourselves without apology. Disruptive, unapologetic transformations, I like to call them, because healing isn't about product being productive. It's about being present with your nervous system, with your needs, with the truth of who you are without the mask. Inside, we do nervous system reset tools similar to the visualization and the breathing techniques that I do on these lives. We do body layered practices and challenges, healing workshops and deep dives. And it's a community that doesn't want to use you, they just want to see you. This is where you get to be witnessed, loved, and replenished. Because you've done enough. You've achieved enough. You've carried enough. And now it's time to feel enough. If you're ready to shift from high performing to deeply healed, if you're ready to stop earning your place and finally inhabit it, this is your sign. This is your sanctuary. This is your seat at the table where you don't have to bring a casserole to be welcomed. So if this is something that's of interest to you, you can scan the QR code on the screen, or you can write freedom in the comments and I'll reach out to you. I want to invite you to come rest, to come reclaim, and to essentially come home to yourself because you deserve that. So that is the end of our training today. We have really dug into what it means to stop performing for love, to stop fixing, to stop being everything to everyone. I am live every Sunday, somewhere between 7 p.m. GMT, which is 2 p.m. EST, and 9 p.m. GMT, which is 4 p.m. EST. And it fluctuates because I'm also still in the middle of recording the other podcasts and I have to move around people's schedules. But I love coming here and sharing my knowledge with you. I am so passionate about these conversations, right? Like, I recognized very late after I got trauma informed how long I have been in survival mode. And I'm making it my purpose to help women exit survival mode because there's so much more to life than performing, to showing up from trauma responses day in and day out, to relinquishing control because you don't think that you have enough power within yourself to move yourself along. You know, accident survival mode, three phases: self awareness, reprogramming, reinvention. And that is what I really hope these trainings will trigger in you. So be sure to join me every week. You can catch the replay if you are not available during the times. Um, but yeah, I do love having these conversations. So again, you do not have to perform to be loved. You don't have to be useful to be accepted. The choice is yours. You can choose today to change your narrative, and I hope that you do. So, thanks again for joining. I will definitely see you next week. And in the meantime, be kind to yourself, right? Like, life is life in. Life is life in. And, you know, we have to learn how to navigate that, but give yourself grace, give yourself compassion, and give yourself one more day to figure it out. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.